All right, everybody, welcome to another deep dive. Today we're going to get into something that's pretty fundamental, but also
Yeah.
really important, urinary elimination.
It might not sound glamorous, but it's definitely a vital system.
It really is. And especially for all you nursing students out there, you're going to encounter this system on a daily basis. So understanding how it works and all the things that can go wrong is crucial.
Absolutely. You need to know how to keep it running smoothly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's start with the basics. Can you give us a quick rundown of the anatomy of the urinary system? What are the key organs and how do they all work together?
Sure. So think of it as a super efficient waste management system with the kidneys as the stars of the show.
Okay, I like that analogy.
These amazing organs, they filter your entire blood volume every 30 minutes, removing all those waste products and excess fluids.
Wow, every 30 minutes. That's impressive.
Right. And they do all that while maintaining a perfect balance of electrolytes and blood pressure.
It's like a nonstop filtering factory.
Precisely. And once the kidneys have done their job, the waste product, which is now urine, it travels down these tubes called ureters to the bladder.
So the bladder is like a holding tank.
You could say that, but it's also much more than that. It's a muscular sac that can expand and contract, and it has these amazing sensors that let your brain know when it's time to go.
That whole gotta go feeling.
Exactly. And that feeling happens because of the complex interplay of nerves, muscles, and pressure that we call micturition, or more simply, urination.
Okay, so break down that process for us. What actually happens when we need to, go?
Well, as the bladder fills up, those sensors called stretch receptors, they send signals to your brain.
Like a little alarm system?
Yeah, exactly like that. And then the brain sends a message back down, triggering a cascade of events.
It all happens so fast.
Right. The detrusor muscle, which surrounds the bladder, it contracts and squeezes the urine out. At the same time, the internal and external sphincter muscles relax and open up the pathway for the urine to flow out through the urethra.
Wow, so many moving parts working together in perfect harmony.
It's an amazing system. But of course, things can go wrong.
And that's where our role as nurses becomes crucial.
Absolutely. We need to be able to recognize when things aren't working properly and provide the appropriate care.
So what are some of the common urinary issues that we need to be aware of, especially as nursing students?
Well, you'll see urinary retention where the bladder doesn't empty completely, urinary incontinence, which is the involuntary leakage of urine, and of course, urinary tract infections or UTIs.
Right, those pesky UTIs. Everyone's had one at some point.
It seems like it, yeah.
Each of these issues has its own set of challenges and interventions.
Definitely. Understanding those is a key part of nursing practice.
I remember this case study from nursing school, a woman named Anna Galinsky, who was experiencing incontinence in a long-term care facility.
Ah, yes, Miss Galinsky. Her case was a classic example of how complex these issues can be, especially in older adults.
Absolutely. There were so many factors to consider. The type and severity of incontinence, her overall health and cognitive status. It wasn't a one-size-fits-all situation.
Exactly. We had to weigh the pros and cons of different interventions. Toileting programs, absorbent products, and even catheterization.
So many different approaches.
Right. And each one has its own risks and benefits, so it's really about personalized care, finding the best fit for each patient.
And speaking of catheters, that's a whole other area we need to talk about.
Oh, yeah. Catheters are fascinating and sometimes a little intimidating.
I remember being pretty nervous about them in clinicals.
It's understandable. They're powerful tools, but they come with risks too, so you have to know when and how to use them safely.
Okay, so let's start with the basics. When is a catheter absolutely necessary?
Well, several situations come to mind, like if a patient has acute urinary retention and other methods haven't been effective, a catheter can be really important for relief.
Makes sense. And I imagine in a critical care setting, they're pretty standard for accurate monitoring of urine output.
You got it. It's vital to keep a close eye on critically ill patients, so catheters become really important.
Right. And also during certain surgeries. I remember learning about that.
Yes, especially procedures involving the bladder or nearby areas. Catheters help ensure the bladder's empty, which helps prevent complications.
And for getting sterile urine samples, too.
Absolutely. When a clean catch sample isn't possible, a catheter can help obtain a sterile specimen so you get reliable test results.
So it's all about having the right tool for the job. And speaking of tools, There's so many different kinds of catheters. Can we go over those a little bit?
Of course. Let's start with the indwelling catheter, sometimes called a Foley catheter.
I saw a lot of those in clinicals.
It's a common one for sure. This type is designed for continuous drainage, and it has that little balloon to keep it securely in place inside the bladder.
Right. And then you have the intermittent catheters,
Mm-hmm.
the ones that are removed after each use.
Yeah, those are often called straight catheters.
Okay.
And then there are the external catheters. Those are less invasive, and they carry a lower risk of infection.
Like the condom catheters for men and those external collection systems for women.
Exactly. Those can be great alternatives to indwelling catheters, especially for patients who are more prone to complications.
But even with the risks, indwelling catheters are still pretty common, right?
They are, but it's crucial to remember that any type of catheterization, especially indwelling ones, comes with risks.
The biggest one being infection.
You got it. Catheter-associated urinary tract infections, or CUTIs, are definitely a serious concern.
So understanding proper catheter care is absolutely essential.
No doubt about it. We'll go over those guidelines a little later, but for now I want to shift gears a bit and talk about something that might not get a lot of attention in a fundamental nursing course.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What is it?
We're going to talk about what happens when the kidneys fail and patients need dialysis.
Ah, yes. Renal failure. That's a whole other level of complexity.
It is. But even at this stage, it's good to understand the basics.
Okay, so I remember learning about two main types of dialysis. Hemodialysis and peritoneal dialysis. Can you give us a quick overview of how they work?
Sure. Think of hemodialysis as an external filter. The patient's blood is circulated through a machine that takes out the waste products and excess fluids.
So it basically does the job that the kidneys can't do anymore.
Exactly. And this usually happens a few times a week at a dialysis center.
And then you have peritoneal dialysis. That one's a little different, isn't it?
It is. In this case, a special solution is put into the patient's abdomen, and their peritoneum, which is the lining of the abdominal cavity, acts as the filter.
It's amazing how both of these methods can be life-saving for people with kidney failure.
It really is. And nurses play a vital role in both types of dialysis.
So we've covered a lot of ground, the basics of the urinary system, some of the common problems, catheters, and even dialysis. It's a lot to absorb.
It is, but it's all crucial for nurses to understand.
Absolutely. And we're just getting started. There's so much more to explore in the fascinating world of urinary elimination.
There really is. Stay tuned.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about urinary diversions.
Okay. Urinary diversions. I vaguely remember this from textbooks, but I never really quite grasped it.
It can be a little bit daunting, but once you get the concept, it's pretty fascinating.
Can you kind of break it down for us in a way that makes sense for nursing students?
Absolutely. So basically, a urinary diversion is a surgically created pathway for urine to exit the body. It's needed when the normal rate through the bladder and urethra isn't an option.
So like in cases of bladder cancer, when the bladder needs to be removed?
Exactly. After a cystectomy, which is the removal of the bladder, surgeons have to create a new way for urine to be eliminated.
That makes sense. So how do they actually create these diversions?
There are different ways to do it, but one common approach is to use a section of the intestine.
Intestine.
Yeah. The body is incredibly adaptable.
So they're actually using part of the digestive system to create a new pathway for urine. That's amazing.
It is pretty amazing. It might sound strange, but it's a really effective way to make a new conduit for urine to flow out.
Are there different types of urinary diversions?
There are. One common type is called an ileal conduit, where they use a small piece of the ileum, which is part of the small intestine, to create a stoma.
Okay. Remind me what a stoma is again.
A stoma is an opening on the surface of the abdomen, and in this case, it's the point where urine exits the body.
So the urine drains out of the stoma and into a pouch that the patient wears.
Exactly. It's a big adjustment for patients both physically and emotionally, but it allows them to eliminate urine safely.
I bet there's a lot of specialized care and education involved to help them adjust to living with a urinary diversion.
Absolutely. Nurses play a vital role in teaching patients how to care for their stoma, change the pouch system, and watch for any signs of complications.
So things like keeping the area clean and dry,
Yeah.
checking for irritation or infection, and making sure the pouch is fitted properly.
Exactly. We want to see a healthy stoma that's nice and pink or red moist and without any unusual discharge.
It sounds like a lot to learn.
It is. But it's so rewarding to be able to empower patients to take care of themselves and maintain their quality of life.
Now, besides the ileal conduit, are there any other types of urinary diversions?
Yes, there are. Another option is what's called a continent urinary diversion. In this case, they create an internal pouch to hold the urine.
Oh, so instead of draining continuously, it collects in this pouch.
Exactly. And then the patient can catheterize the pouch at regular intervals to empty it.
Wow. So they don't have to wear an external pouch all the time.
Right. It gives them more control and discretion, but it does mean they have to learn to catheterize themselves, which can be challenging.
So there are definitely pros and cons to each type.
Absolutely. It really depends on the individual patient and their needs.
Now, before we move on, I want to touch on something really important.
What's that?
The emotional impact. I mean, having a urinary diversion is a major life change and must be really tough for patients.
You're absolutely right. These patients have been through a lot, and it's so important to provide compassionate care and support.
So how can we as nurses help them cope with that emotional side of things?
I think the first thing is just to be a good listener. Give them a space to express their fears and concerns without judgment.
And validating their feelings, letting them know it's okay to feel overwhelmed.
Exactly. And connecting them with resources like support groups or counselors, people who can help them navigate this new reality.
It's all about treating the whole person, not just the physical condition.
Absolutely. Now, we've talked about different urinary problems, but we haven't really gotten into the specifics of incontinence. And I know this is a big one for nursing students.
It is. It's something every nurse is going to encounter at some point in their career.
And it's not just an older person problem. It can affect anyone at any age and for many different reasons.
But one thing that's important to emphasize is that it's never normal. It's not something people should just accept.
I agree. There are treatments and management strategies available, and it's up to us to help patients find the right solutions.
Okay, so let's break down the different types of incontinence. I remember stress incontinence and urge incontinence, but I need a refresher on the details.
Sure. Let's start with stress incontinence. This is the kind that happens when there's a sudden increase in abdominal pressure.
Like when you cough or sneeze.
Exactly. Or even when you laugh or exercise. And that pressure basically overwhelms the muscles that control the flow of urine.
And this is often caused by weakened pelvic floor muscles.
Right.
And that can happen after childbirth or with aging or even obesity.
You got it. Now, urge incontinence, on the other hand, is that sudden overwhelming urge to urinate where you feel like you can't hold it.
Oh yeah, we've all been there.
Right. It's usually caused by an overactive bladder where the bladder muscles contract even when the bladder isn't full.
So it's those signals between the bladder and the brain getting mixed up.
Exactly. And it can be really unpredictable and frustrating.
Okay, so stress incontinence, weak muscles, urge incontinence, overactive bladder. What other types are there?
Well, you can have a combination of those two, which we call mixed incontinence.
So you get the worst of both worlds.
Pretty much. And then there's overflow incontinence, which happens when the bladder doesn't empty completely.
So it's kind of constantly dribbling.
You could say that. And it can be caused by things like an obstruction, certain medications, or nerve damage.
So many things can disrupt the normal flow of urine.
It's true. And then there's functional incontinence. This is where the problem isn't with the bladder itself, but with being able to get to the toilet on time.
So this is more common in older adults or people with mobility issues.
It can be.
Yeah.
And also in people with cognitive impairments who might not recognize the urge or have trouble getting to the bathroom.
Okay. So it's important to assess all those factors.
Definitely. And there are a couple of less common types, too. Reflex incontinence, which is involuntary urination without any warning, and total incontinence, which is continuous leakage.
Wow, that's a lot of different types to keep straight.
It is. And each one calls for a different approach to management.
So let's talk about those management strategies. What are some things nurses can do to help patients with incontinence?
Well, it depends on the type and severity, but there are a lot of options. Lifestyle changes can help some people, like losing weight, cutting back on caffeine, or avoiding certain foods.
And I know pelvic floor exercises are really important, those Kegel exercises.
Yes, those can make a huge difference for stress incontinence. And there's something patients can do on their own once they learn the right technique.
And there are bladder training programs too, right?
Right. Those help people gradually increase the time between bathroom breaks so they can retrain their bladder to hold more urine.
So it's kind of like giving your bladder a workout.
I guess you could say that. And there are medications that can relax the bladder or strengthen the muscles involved.
So there are lots of different ways to approach it.
Exactly. And in some cases, surgery might be an option, although that's usually a last resort.
Okay, good to know. Now, while we're on the topic of managing incontinence, I want to circle back to that case study of Anne Galinsky.
Ah, yes. Miss Galinsky. Her case was a good reminder of how important it is to protect the skin, especially for patients who are incontinent.
Exactly. Incontinence-associated dermatitis, or IAD, can be a real problem.
It can. It's painful and can lead to serious infections.
So what are the key things nurses need to do to prevent and manage IAD?
It comes down to meticulous skincare, frequent cleaning gentle cleansers, patting the skin dry, and using barrier creams.
And avoiding harsh soaps or anything that can irritate the skin?
Definitely. And if a patient is using briefs or pads, making sure those are changed regularly is really important.
It's all about keeping the skin dry and protected.
Exactly.
You know, it's amazing how everything we've talked about ties back to the bigger picture of patient care.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's a simple UTI or a complex case like renal failure. Understanding the urinary system is fundamental to providing good nursing care.
Thinking back on my nursing school days, I wish I had something like this deep dive to help me see how it all connects and why it matters.
I know what you mean. It's one thing to memorize all the anatomy and physiology, but it's another to actually understand how it all plays out in real-life situations with patients.
Exactly. And that's what I love about these deep dives. We don't just scratch the surface. We really get into the details that make nursing such a challenging but rewarding profession.
I couldn't agree more. It's all about building on that basic knowledge and developing that critical thinking and judgment that makes nurses so special.
So for all those nursing students out there who are just starting to learn about urinary elimination, don't get overwhelmed.
It is a lot, but once you've got those fundamentals down, you'll be well on your way to becoming awesome nurses.
And remember, you don't have to know it all right away. Nursing is a lifelong learning process, and there are always resources to help you.
That's right. Textbooks, articles, online resources, and of course, podcasts like this one.
That's right. That's a shameless plug for us. But seriously, don't be afraid to ask questions. Talk to your instructors, your mentors, your fellow nurses. We've all been there.
Exactly. Collaboration is so important in nursing. We all learn from each other.
Now, before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final thought-provoking question.
Ooh, I like those. Hit me with it.
So we've talked about how crucial it is to listen to our patients and be their advocate, especially for something as personal as urinary elimination.
Absolutely. That patient-centered approach is everything.
But what about those patients who can't speak for themselves or who might be uncomfortable talking about these sensitive issues? How do we make sure they're getting the best possible care?
That is such an important question. It really gets at the heart of what it means to be a compassionate and skilled nurse.
It's about more than just tasks and procedures.
Right. It's about paying close attention to those subtle cues and advocating for those who can't advocate for themselves.
Going the extra mile to make sure they're comfortable and their dignity is preserved.
Exactly. And recognizing that every patient is different. Their needs will change based on their age, their culture, their cognitive abilities, and their overall health.
So remember, caring for the urinary system isn't just about catheters and output.
Right. It's so much more than that.
It's about the whole person, their physical well-being, their emotional state.
It's about being a skilled clinician, but also a compassionate advocate.
And never stop learning.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, I think that about wraps up our deep dive into the world of urinary elimination.
It's been a journey.
It really has. We've covered the anatomy, the problems, the interventions, the role of the nurse. We even touched on renal failure and dialysis.
We did. It's complex but fascinating.
I definitely have a new appreciation for this system. It's so much more than just peeing.
It really is. It's a vital part of our overall health.
And for those nursing students out there, I hope this deep dive has given you a good foundation for understanding this amazing system and how you can provide great care to your patients.
And remember, there's always more to learn. Keep asking those questions and stay curious.
We've got some great resources in the show notes if you want to dig a little deeper into certain topics.
So until next time, happy learning, everyone.
And don't forget to stay hydrated. Those kidneys are working hard and need all the fluids they can get.
Cheers to that.